Disclaimer at the beginning of this video, I want to thank all of you for who have subscribed and given me the views and liking my video. I appreciate you guys a lot, and, well, I just wanted to say thank you. Let's get into the video. October 1st, 2006. My name is Michael Fernandez, and I run I'm an employee of a undisclosed company where, after the unfortunate events at the lovely prehistoric park that everyone was so acquainted to, Jurassic World, and after the downfall of their kingdom, my boss created us. But I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about the end of that specific thing that still haunts my nightmares. Alta Megalonyx. We designed this thing by using a lot of DNAs that are well known in the community, I guess. It is it's a monster. We created a monster. It was early in the morning. We were walking to the store because we had a store on site. We weren't allowed to leave our facility. We basically lived there. But I was walking to the on-site store. I wanted to get myself something for breakfast. It was early in the morning, and the sound of creatures roaring and sound of machines whirring was unaccustomed to me at this point. I got to the store, bought myself an egg wrap and a coffee. It's pretty standard stuff. I headed back to the office where I worked on the main computer systems of the facility, which I would learn would be a change, would become something different. And so, as I got to the main office, the boss came to me and said, "Hey, I need you to take a shift. John's not feeling well. I need you to go check the Alta's main paddock. We don't have someone to check it out right now, so can you go do that for me? Thanks." I wasn't so happy with having to do this, but at the end of the day, it was fine. It's my job to take care of these things. So I made my way down the corridor, the main hall. There were many rooms. Some had names of creatures, some had empty numbers, simply saying paddock 1259, and had no creature identity. One of them I remember seeing very specifically, and didn't know they had designed it yet, but Monolotherium. Didn't know they had made that, but for another day, I guess. I made my way down to the end of the hall, and there was an elevator that took me down into the bottom of the second floor of the already underground base. Well, it wasn't exactly underground. It was underground, but it was it used to be a sinkhole in the ground in an old deserted tropical island. Though we didn't know it wasn't deserted. Dear Lord. But I got to the paddock that said paddock 779, Alta Megalonyx, Linerenix. Sorry, I don't know who named it. I'm still trying to remember how to pronounce that thing's name. We all call it the Alta M, because, well, there was another one, but that's for a different day, another time. So, as I went into the main control room, checked the stats, made sure everything was in order, I had been told by one of the security officers on the way down that I had to feed Alta Megalonyx. So, with that, I pressed a button, pull a lever, and the feeding bay door opened, and a Elmathos Therium, I think is how they called it. It's a big woolly rhino, in other words. Entered the paddock, know what horrors it would encounter. But it would learn very poorly that this would be its last moments as a prehistoric marvel. Anyways, the creature walking in the middle of the paddock, I just remember seeing glimpses of this thing. It sprinted out of the forest and, well, through the forest. Its paddock was huge. It was basically an underground cave in and of itself, had artificial light from the ceiling to mimic day and night cycles. And I just remember seeing the Elma get brutally murdered. It slammed it into the ground and it used its tail to slash against its head. I watched the blood of the creature spew out as it roared in agony. The creature then stomped on its neck. It didn't even kill the creature, for the Elementotherium is very powerful. It's a big creature, but Alta M didn't care. It stomped on its neck. It immobilized its prey temporarily before it started ripping into its side. I watched it scarf down organs, guts, heart, lungs, all while the creature was still semi-alive. It gurgled as it slowly died from its lack of organs as the Alta M proceeded to consume it while alive. It stood over its prey as if it was some kind of twisted trophy. It left the carcass there. It had completely hollowed out the internals, eating all the organs, heart, lungs, everything. It napped at some of the leg meat and some of the torso meat, but that was it. It left most of it intact. It was wasteful. It was horrific. It was a nightmare. I could not. I proceeded to run onto the in-paddock bathroom and vomited. I could not get that image out of my head. For the next week, I had nightmares of being chased by that thing. I knew about it. It was in our database. I was our main data operative. I kept track of everything. All these, they called them hybrids or attractions. These things are monsters. They're fucking demons. We made creatures that shouldn't have even existed in nature. This thing isn't natural. So I looked into the file because it was restricted. So I used my superior access and hacked into the file. This thing isn't even like a normal hybrid. Normal hybrids have one or two genomes, maybe maximum. It usually has a parent and two parents, father and mother, or main recipient and secondary recipient. This thing, it had 5 parents. God knows what else. Because, well, here, I'll read out to you what was in this thing's DNA. It had Megatyrannix. The fuck is that? Ankylosaur, Kentrosaurus, Spinosaurus, Achelonosaurus, some kind of Pechyrhinos, kind of Triceratops-like creature. I don't care what it was. Whatever it was huge. I remember seeing on the file, and remember in when I was there, the paddocked observation window where they had the main room. It was a small room on the corner of the paddock that was elevated about 80 feet in the air. It was designed that way. This thing stood at it was almost at the level of the window. This thing stood 72 feet long. It was 72 feet long. This creature was huge. Sorry, it wasn't 80 feet in the air. I'm misremembering something. I'm still a little frazzled. It was 30 feet in the air, but still, it was high enough off the ground that this creature couldn't get to us. But I remember seeing it was monstrously tall. It was 15 plus feet tall. This creature's back was armored with teeth, plates, and spikes, and armor. This thing was engineered to murder. Its head was heavily armored with frill, and it had attributes from all the parents, clearly. It had armored back similar to a ankylosaur. Its tail was a mixture between the spikes of a kentrosaur and a spinosaur's flat tail. It even possessed a small sail. Its lower jaw was jutted out a little bit further, showing it had the Spinosaurus DNA in its lower jaw, while its upper head clearly took on parentage from its Achilanosaur parent. This thing is it's a monster. I cannot, sorry, I know I'm repeating myself. This thing haunts me. That being said, I know I probably started this with something else, so I guess might as well explain what happened after I'll explain what happened. It was later in the year. It was 4 months later. It was I remember the date. It's been a while. I checked. It was, I believe, either December, sometime in December or January. I was informed that I was to take a shift again and to take care of this creature. I protested to my boss, vividly saying I did not ever want to see that creature again. He simply coughed it off and said, "What, are you scared of something? It's protected, don't worry, you're safe, you're this, you're that." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He acted like it was some normalcy that there was a creature this thing's size and nature normally. It's not normal. Nothing about this is normal. But whatever. I didn't want to lose my job. If I lost my job, I would be screwed because I either would be put to jail or who God knows what else happens to people who get fired. I just know that Linda got fired last year. No one's heard from her ever again. I don't want to end up that way. So I made my way back down, over to its paddock. I was told to simply watch over it. It had been fed by the previous handler who had to call in sick. So I went and watched it. I watched it and I watched it. The scariest thing is that I didn't see it. I thought it was sleeping in its den. They had built a den in the cave, or in its paddock, somewhere at the back of its paddock. For some reason, these builders built the paddock cave so you couldn't see the den from the observation deck. It was stupid. It was dumb. It was idiotic and moronic, but whatever. A security guard came out into the observation floor. He had to check on me. It was his... My boss was worried about me, saying, "Oh, I'm concerned you're going to have a mental attack. Let me make sure that you're fine. I'll send a guard with you." I didn't need to be babysat. I needed to get out of this fucking room. But whatever. I talked to him a little bit. It felt like I was 4, being checked up on by a aunt or uncle, making sure, "Oh, are you alright? Are you this? Are you that?" I didn't need a babysitter. I confirmed all his questions. "I'm fine, just a little frazzled. This thing's fine, blah blah blah." I remember the 3rd check. He came in and looked around inside the paddock and looked at me and said, "Hey, have you seen this thing yet? This is the 3rd time I've checked on you, and I haven't seen the Ultra M. Where is it?" I looked at him and said, "Mate, it says on the sensors he's somewhere in here. He has to be fine." He didn't look impressed. He proceeded to say, "What do you mean on the sensors? The systems have been down for the last 3 hours." My blood ran cold and I froze there. The system that had been governing the sensors was down, as in it no longer functioned. That means it wouldn't be tracking it. I would have screamed, but my throat contracted, not letting me shout out in horror. I spun around on my heels and started I slammed on the control panel, trying to get the systems up. Eventually, I was able to reconnect the system. I couldn't move in that moment. The sensors on the screen, now that I had the system info and data back up, it said containment breach. back wall had been bashed open by this creature. While I was not able to see its data, it left. It took advantage of the fact that I couldn't see it from the observation deck. This thing knew I couldn't see it, took advantage. I spun around screaming at him, "You need to alert everyone! It's not in here anymore!" It was too late. It was too late. Sirens blared the moment I said this, as the PDA sound came over the radios and PDA inside the deck.
All personnel, please report to your panic stations. All personnel, please report to your panic stations. We have a containment breach. Entity Megalunarx has escaped containment. Please return to your panic place or room.
I was mortified to realize I ended us. The rest of this, I remember, the first half at least was a blur. I ran out of the room, pushing the guard to the side. I was determined to do whatever I could to stop this thing. I ran upstairs, went up the elevator the fastest I could, as fast as an elevator will take you. And I remember getting up there, all the other paddock was fine, got to the main station, the main control room. Everyone had left. I knew they would be in their panic rooms. They would be in their, they'd be safe in their personal vaults. Everyone had one in their room. I didn't care. In this period of time, I had to do something. I just caused possibly everyone's death, and I was going to do something about it. So I hacked into the servers and rung up surveillance cams. It didn't matter. Didn't matter. I remember seeing this thing on the surveillance cam in one of the other creatures' paddocks. It had bashed through the exterior wall because a majority of this facility was underground, but on the exterior of the vault there were generators and supply farms out there. They had artificial UV. Basically, this whole thing was underground. It was underground a small mountain. Because of the sinkhole had created this kind of slope on the side of a semi-plain style mountain. So it was a flatter hill, but it still had enough underground. Anyways, it had bashed out, dug up, and had gone around the outside, smashed into this creature's paddock, and I just remember seeing the Alta Megalunarx ripping this creature apart. It was I don't remember what it was. It wasn't one of our documented biggest hybrids we had. It was a work in progress. We had tested a lot of our hybrids before, but we had to test them before, Box said, all right, we can release them into a paddock. So basically just the, they called it the incubation paddock, where they would grow them and then they would hatch their eggs. Anyways, I remember seeing this thing fight back for its life, but Ultimegalunarx just used its tail to smash it against the paddock wall. The creature basically was done for at that point. It still fought, but Ultimegalunarx stomped on its skull. Every camera has basic kind of, what's it called, audio recording softwares. And so I just remember hearing, as its foot came down on its head, a wet, horrible crunch as its fleas and whines came to an abrupt halt. It didn't even eat this thing. It bit down around its neck and tore its remaining head off. Just dropped it to the side like it was some kind of trophy. And then roared and continued on. I ran out of the control room towards my panic vault. I unfortunately had a room that was past the incubation center because it was a lot of the rooms were there. As I was sprinting, this thing smashed through the inner wall, getting into the main facility, which was basically a museum, but not for the public. I yelped and dashed into what was basically a laundry chute. It didn't go anywhere though. It was more like a large box where you put laundry and laundry stuffs. It had a glass window, a small few glass windows and a three-slit vent. I guess that was the window. I guess it was allowed. It was made so that it was moldy. It allowed airflow through it. So I hid at the back. They had just done laundry, so there was nothing to hide in there. So just remember sitting at the back of this thing, and this laundry box, and watching it stomp by, its footsteps echoing, and it leaned down, sniffing the grate. I held my breath as it lowered its lower torso so that its eye could peer through, and I just closed my eyes and prayed to God that it wouldn't see me. It sat there for 5 minutes. After the first minute, I thought it was gone. I opened my eyes and met this thing's singular eye that I could see. I was frozen in terror. I didn't move an inch. I didn't move a muscle. I didn't even know if I was breathing. Only small, ragged gasps would come from my mouth. After that, it stood up and walked away. I don't remember how long I was there, but I was there for a while. I do remember hearing the stomping coming back, the loud booming footsteps, and then it leaned back down. This time it wasn't the eye, it was the tip of the snout that was in front of the grate. I will never forget this moment because I never forget this moment. I don't know what fucking DNA or something we put in this, but whatever we put in this monster, this titan of a creature, knows how fucking mimic human voices. Not good. It doesn't do a good job, but it knows how to copy them. I don't know what we added to this thing, but whatever we made a team. I just remember hearing the distorted voice of construction site manager Davis, who was designated to work on the outer wall, which ironically was where it first broke out, was designated to work there that day. I just remember it opening its jaws. It didn't talk. It didn't snap its jaws rapidly. It seemed that it had like an internal mouth inside its throat or something. I don't know. But I just remember hearing this distorted.
What are you doing, dude?
I froze in horror. I didn't speak a word. I didn't even breathe. I held my breath. It stayed there for a moment. It repeated that 2 more times before it stood up, walked away. After what felt like an hour, I got out and was greeted by a guard. He was disheveled and looked like he'd seen the devil. Wouldn't blame him, honestly. He informed me that it had escaped, and they had no way of tracking it because it had clawed the tracker out of its chest, which it shouldn't be able to. Its arms were too short to reach that area. There was a reason why we did that. It somehow did. And so it was on the island. We took precautions to try to track it down. We couldn't find anything. After the second search party went missing, We stopped looking and said, if we don't look for it, hopefully it won't find us. Well, it was the first of the downfall, collapse of our everything. I'm sorry. I'm sorry if you were there and this happened to you. If you were on this island, this resort, when it escaped. Because we didn't know until later that it had been reopened during the construction period, because we were in an underground facility. We didn't know that an island resort had been constructed on the northern side of the island, where it was a small resort, had a hotel, some pools, and a massive lakeside attraction that was basically just a really big strip mall, but like in Hawaiian fashion. There was a trail into the woods that, or I guess into the foliage, into the flora, that had a tour guide or whatever that led up into one of the mountain, one of the peaks on the northern side. It was whatever. We didn't know much until later. You were there that day. I am sorry for whatever happened to you. Maybe you happened to leave that day. Like you went back home and you heard of the stories, or you lost somebody to this collapse of a facility. Because this wasn't the only thing that happened. I'm truly sorry. Entry